Welcome everyone to the podcast. I'm here with Samuel Ekpe of Grupa.io, and we're going to talk about his startup and about how work is being redefined, whether in today's society. Samuel, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Hi, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here.
So before we get into like the details concerning how we view work as being redefined in today's society, why don't you tell me about your startup and what Grupa.io is trying to do?
Cool. So my startup is about helping connect people in a whole new way. All right. Grupa is a platform that helps startup founders, early stage startups get connected with these employees, product engineering teams that work at the big tech companies who today are bored. They're looking for the next big thing. They're looking for interesting project and they have free time. And so we connect them through a platform to build great product. We call it the Airbnb or Uber for product development.
That's super cool. In many respects, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, everyone right now is talking about the great resignation. And you talk about, people, whether they're product people or business people at large corporations being bored with their jobs or wanting even different skill sets. And do you think that what we're seeing right now with the great resignation is not only a rethink of what work means, but how we do it?
Yeah, it's a rethink of the entire organization structure. All right. I think the previous 30 years has been organizing systems around production of hardware and production of tools. And we moved that to a mentality of services. And then the system reorganized to building efficiency around distribution of services. And then now it reorganized towards building data-centric system, technology systems, and the entire work organization changed to make mainly pod structure where you have cross-functional teams working together, powering innovation on technology and software and AI and all those models. Now, this entire time, work has always happened. This entire reorganization has happened with the current fundamental management structure. This is the first time in the world where growth innovation is changing at rapid decadal pace, happening all in 1 year, and the entire management structure being reorganized towards distributed, autonomy-driven management structure. So I think it's a rethinking of everything.
You brought up a very, I guess, very, very high level, because I think what you're talking about not only is the fundamental restructure of work, but of society itself. And I always like to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you kind of hit on hardware, and I'm gonna probe on hardware in a second, because I know a lot of hardware people say, no, I don't know what you're talking about. We can't distribute hardware, right? The physical component, but we'll get to that in a second. But it sounds like what we're seeing is the next revolution in how we organize ourselves, not only for work, but as a civilization. I always like to say, in the past, when humans first became a civilization, we started off with like the God-given right of one individual to rule over a bunch of people, kings and queens. Then we went into constitutional monarchy. Now we're in the constitutional democracy, right? And I feel like, to your point, we're reaching another stage of organizing ourselves where it's the top-down command and control no longer is effective, because not only people are more intelligent, more educated, more sophisticated, and have more tools to execute on their ideas, but they have social media, so their distribution channels don't require human capital to execute. I can literally just hit a button and say, send my message out on YouTube or Twitter at a touch of a button.
I think that the command and control system has to change. And in fact, that's a component of education. The entire system has always been built around setting people ready for the jobs that existed. But now the fundamental, not just the jobs, the fundamental structure of the job and how it's deployed and how services are rendered has changed. So we need real new reorganization of society. Even the way we build houses, We never built houses knowing that we're going to have workspaces in the house. We never built parks knowing that we needed workspaces in the park. People now, we need to reorganize society. We see a future where people are going to build new cities with this kind of new workers in mind. People that, you touched about democracy. Democracy has not moved to work. People today are even trying to renegotiate how to work, all right? The full democracy of work says people should choose how to work, when to work, what to work on, whom to work with, for products they like, for organizations they like. Today, they can only choose who they want to work with, and but they can't choose how they want to do the work, all right? And they can't choose its schedule of work. So we think that we're having partial democracy when it comes to work, and the command and control is mixed for remanagement. The future is about self-organizing teams, pure democracy of work, providing a system of accountability and responsibility to track outcomes and not just control how the input is rendered. We should focus on the outcomes.
You brought up another interesting point there, but before we get to that one, so we talked about command and control, and I think you see a lot of that still exists in manufacturing type economies, right? You have to be in a physical location. You need people to do their jobs at a certain pace in order to be productive, et cetera, and do it effectively. What do you say to those individuals that state that, look, we've had this system for, over a century, right? Let's start from Henry Ford, but even before then, it's been effective. We've gotten lots of productivity and overall societal advancement gains. What you're talking about, the democratization of work, how do we apply it to that physical infrastructure, like building machines, building capital? And secondly, what do you say to those? And you hear those stories in the 19th century about, plant owners saying, look, workers are lazy, they won't self-organize, they'll just be a drain on society. We're putting them to work, and this is the way we've structured it is the most effective way.
So the way my mind works is systems thinking. All right. I believe that the systems that were created, as you said, they were created for manufacturing industry, manufacturing economy. We are not in a manufacturing economy any longer. We're in a knowledge economy. In fact, I call it that we are actually pioneering the future, which is co-creator economy. All right. And so for companies who are thinking about production, for companies who are thinking about ways to, self-organize the workspace such that they can be efficient, they're being limited by the physical environment of how where the work should happen, right? We need to think beyond the physical environment, right? And think about, even if you're a physical manufacturing company, right? There are simulation, there are tools to help you leverage the distributed workforce to be able to design models, right? We can build out models, test the models, and then we can now centralize production system. And of course, leverage automation and everything, because whether we like it or not, for physical production, automation is going to take that place. But where automation is not going to take is the innovation, creativity. That has to be decentralized. And so that's the future of organizations, even if they're having physical components of producing or manufacturing goods.
Interesting. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. I feel like we're at that tipping point where the automation of the production of physical goods will basically say, I don't care if it's made in the United States or made in Canada or made in the EU, because a automated plant will produce the same thing on demand when I need it. It's the value added upstream, the innovation, the design, those creative elements that humans so far are the only ones that can do it. So I don't disagree with you on that. But I want to go to something else that you said, and you kind of hinted at. So you mentioned the co-creator economy, but some of the elements before the co-creator economy, you kind of hint at the gig economy, right? That self-directed work, being able to work when I want, where I want, etc. And there's a lot of backlash against the gig economy. right? Because, and it'd be interesting to get your viewpoint, but I get the sense from you that the gig economy that we're experiencing now is this kind of like in between, where it's still top down and it's not truly self-directed. It's partially, but realistically, it's leaning closer to top down. Would that be a fair assessment of the gig economy?
I think the gig economy actually try to create a system where people are self-employed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's okay. That exists. It's an opportunity for that.
Mm-hmm.
But the next economy is going to create systems where people are co-creators, right? Co-executors, not employees. So we move from employees to freelancers, from freelancers to contractors in the gig economy. We are getting to a new economy of co-creators where somebody has a vision, somebody has execution, all right? Strategy, operations, all right? Leadership, management, the co-creation economy, right? That economy is going to define the future of work, all right? And that economy is an economy that is not just controlled by platform. The platform enables the collaborations, right? The platform don't just control how they earn and what they earn. The platform makes them more productive, right? More efficient and effective to carry out innovation at scale. And I call that what the platform that is going to do that is going to put the work operating system on the internet as the layer and infrastructure to power this new economy. And that's what we're really trying to create. First step, create a work operating system, then create a platform that powers the co-creation economy. Because I feel like right today that infrastructure doesn't exist.
Interesting. And I think you kind of alluded to the next question I'm going to ask you. Is like, how is Grupa designing that what you call the work platform to empower the co-creator economy? So you're saying that you're dramatically distinct, and I totally get it, from the current gig economy platforms, right? But how is Grupa doing it in order to kind of like act as that first foundation to drive us towards that co-creator economy?
The first thing is you need a new compensation system,
Mm-hmm.
right? Paying people to do work is like trying to employ them for certain things. So we have a hybrid compensation system where you give them equity, right? In the upside, again, it's a big risk. It's defined by risks and risk management, where together we are taking on these risks. Together we create value, we co-create value, and together we can capture a piece of that value, right? The first thing is new compensation system. So we need a new, some policies and compliance around designing what that compensation will look like at scale and on the
Mm-hmm.
platform. Right, today is happening, but people are signing contracts and it's messy, and people don't know there's cliffs and how you manage all that. It's really messy. We need
Yeah.
to design a legal infrastructure to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is the work OS, managing the work on a system. Today we have too many tools, distributed tools to be able to manage work. There's no integrated system all in one place to be able to centralize work, right? We need to decentralize workforce and centralize the work management. And the final layer is around, creating ways that people can, have predictability into the work. Rather than saying we're just paying for salaries, we're paying you monthly, we want to know, right, are we paying for outcomes? Because now you're self-managed, and the biggest risk with self-management is people could just, not be productive, right? And
Mm-hmm.
companies could be paying for people that are not productive. So rather than paying monthly salaries, you're paying for sprints, you're paying for outcomes and milestones. And people are now knowing that if I'm going to be self-directed, I need to be more accountable and responsible for the outcomes I deliver for the organizations. I think this entire stack makes us have the work OS for the internet.
Interesting. I want to pick on the final point in terms of working on sprints. Some would argue with that statement that almost sounds like a gig economy, right? I'm going to pay per ride, per delivery. But you're trying to define the sprint as you have a defined outcome, right? And that you're properly compensated because you have an interest, because to your point, going back to your first point, you're not only getting paid the salary, you're getting equity. So you have a vested interest in terms of ensuring a successful outcome.
Yeah, I think this is very interesting, very beautiful question. You know, in the gig economy and in the current work structure, organizations set the goals and outcomes, right? In the co-creation economy, we co-create the goals and outcomes. So it's not about, hey, I want you to do X. The question is about, what do our end users want from us, all right? So what should the first sprint from the end user perspective be? So it's not about, and that's part of why the current organization structure has so many flaws, where people have to argue, go back and forth, politics and everything, because we move from serving customers to more around how engagement looks like, right? How we're going to define that logistics around engagement, or how we're going to take time off and all the stuff, rather than focusing on end user and say, what do we need to be delivered for end user from the end user perspective? So we see organization of work around being collaborative, setting goals in more deeply collaborative, not pretense of collaboration, where it's around, it's not about negotiation of the outcome, it's around what does the end user want as outcome.
Interesting. So I'm going to ask you this. So we've highlighted Grupa as kind of building that new co-creator platform for this. What do you think we as a society, or even businesses, so it could be organizations, individuals, could be governments, need to do to kind of accelerate that move towards the co-creator economy?
Very important. So first, we need to create a policy infrastructure. Biden is doing something interesting around non-compete. We need to go deep and say there's so many legal documents that people sign today that is really holding back innovation, right? Can we allow people, you know, what people do outside with 9 to 5 should not, you know, bother companies, right? People should have the opportunity to just render service the 8 hours or whatever is agreed upon, all right? Rather than feeling, today it feels like companies want to own the soul of the employees, and that's why there's a pushback. The pushback, even on the internet right now that they're working remotely, there's still pushback around, there's still micromanagement happening at scale on the internet, all right? So people want to be able to get, you know, freedom. They're not asking for flexible work. They're not asking for remote work. They're asking for freedom. So we need to create policies that help enable, you know, workers to have more freedom, meaning, and flexibility when it comes to deploying their responsibility to the organizations.
It's interesting you bring that up. So at a high level, so, you know, obviously in the old structure, to your point, we incentivize people to work for one company via salaries, right? Whether or not there was sufficient work or not, right? What you're proposing is that is based on outcomes and that there's a bit of salary plus equity. Do you think, let me ask the question, because a lot of people would argue, well, if I were to have a family, if I were to have kids, I need a certain amount of stability over a significant time period. Over those, let's say 18 years before my kid, you know, I give birth to my child, they go to college. Do you think in your new model of the co-creator economy, we offer that stability? Yes, we offer freedom. Yes, we offer flexibility. But at the end of the day, if I can't pay the bills, I can't afford flexibility and freedom in some respect.
Yeah, cool. Very, very important question. I see no reason why somebody should not have a full-time job. And I don't see any reason why jobs should be 8 hours a day. First question. That we need to change that. Right? That has not changed for the last 30 years. And for the last 70 years, almost 100 years, right? The second thing is people can choose to work how many jobs they want, all right? They may have one full-time job with one side gigs if they want, or 2 side gigs if they want, all right? And people today are investing. See this as investing by taking equity. If you take equity and invest in your skills, your asset, which is your knowledge and your expertise into companies, because you're investing for outsized return. The truth is, whatever number of wealth you have been able to create from salary economy cannot be compared to, yes, there's going to be a lot of risks taken by the equity and the cash economy, but there's going to be massive upside if you got 1% of Airbnb when they were in pre-seed stage, all right?
Yeah.
Imagine how much wealth at scale will create. And that's part of why we're here in Silicon Valley, because this is where one of the greatest value is created in the world today, right? And so we think that we can pioneer that future where people can have stability, yes, plus investment into potential outsized return of companies who are very, very interesting.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I think in some respects you've adopted the Silicon Valley model, which is, for instance, exactly to your point, it's cash plus equity, right? And you're trying to expand it, democratize it across the world. But and you hit on this earlier, there's a lot of people with that equity, and you've talked about simplifying the legal structures around it. But would you not argue that there's a little bit more of a educational component that we need to do? We need to do a better job in terms of educating future, not necessarily entrepreneurs, but let's say future co-creators, about what their individual value is and how they can be flexible in plugging into different organizations, different work packages, sprints, whatever you want to call it. And that is going to be like a new type of education is going to be fundamental for the co-creator economy.
Exactly. So I touched around education last time. I said the current education system has been designed for employment industry. All right. Yeah. We need to education moving forward, right? As we either stay in pandemic for as long as necessary or come out from the pandemic, is going to be around this co-creator economy. What does it look like? How do we enable the next 100 years, the next generation to be able to co-create value? You know, the wealth that has been created here in Silicon Valley has been astronomical. Imagine how much we can do if we democratize it and allow everyone anywhere to do that, right? We think that the education that happens here only in Silicon Valley is through conversation, right? It's sort of informal. We need to make it formal. Because today, many people understand RSUs, equity stocks, and everything here. And other parts, even here in the US, you go to other people, they just want to get paid, right? So it's because there is that delta of education. And so there's the bubble happening here where this concentration of knowledge and this education, we need to digitize it. We need to make it democratized. So everyone can understand they can participate in this economy. They can find an interesting company, engage with them. They can keep their full-time job or they negotiate the time they want to work, focus on delivering outcome, get both the stability and get opportunity to invest their money for their children in the future, right? And so we think that the education industry has to catch up to. Education industry too has not changed for a very long time. And they were forced because of pandemic to start doing Zoom, but it's not sustainable. We need to create both the model, the distribution, and the content.
I 100% agree with you on that. I've been a big advocate in terms of reforming education. And I think you and I both agree that education has not changed in a long time. In many respects, it's still, you know, if we go back to the very ancient times of like monks just wrote memorization and then keep moving it forward. And just like, as long as you do the rote memorization works. And I think not only as our society, but our civilization is much more dynamic in that. And we can do much more in terms of creativity and innovation if we change our education model to match the needs of the individual and the organization, i.e. in the co-creator economy. And I actually want to hit on something you kind of mentioned a couple of times. One was, that concentration of informal knowledge in Silicon Valley and also some of the opportunities. I guess what you're doing at Grupa and what you're pushing for in the co-creator economy is kind of what happened during the pandemic, which is, no, we don't need to concentrate it. We can enable everyone, regardless of where you live, to participate in it, versus you having to move to a city you may or may not like, right? Would that be a fair assessment?
Our true goal is to put Silicon Valley in the cloud. Right? So yeah, we say our mission is simple: to democratize access to innovation and allow anyone, anywhere, build the next big thing. People, knowledge, ideas are democratized. Today, capability and execution is not democratized. So we want to put that on the internet.
Interesting. So not only are you putting Silicon Valley in the cloud, as you say, you're not only putting the employees in the cloud, you're putting the startups themselves in the cloud. So you're uniting the founders and the employees. So it doesn't matter if I'm located in Bali, Indonesia, or Jakarta, Indonesia, or sorry, Osaka, Japan, probably is a better example.
Yeah,
They can co-create if they have common interests, and they can
yeah.
both get rewarded equally because they're going to get the short-term incentive, i.e. the
Mhm.
cash incentive, plus the long-term incentive being the equity.
Yes. So because this is now going to enable collaboration that's never happened before, right? Somebody can sit in Lagos and then co-create with somebody in New York, with a company could be based here in Silicon Valley. All this happening in a new economy that is digitized in the cloud, and then with incentive aligned in the cloud, right? With a system where they can manage their stocks and portfolio of wealth. We think that this is the future, and we want to make it happen.
That sounds like an exciting future, and one I'm personally excited about. Let me ask you this though, because you mentioned it's all in the cloud, right? And Mark Zuckerberg, he's talked about the metaverse, right? Like having a digital version of ourselves. But you also see a lot of pushback from a lot of individuals saying, hey, I need to meet with my team or meet with individuals in person, one-on-one over coffee or drinks in order to build that bond, build that friendship. So even though Grupa is moving Silicon Valley into cloud, do you think it can overcome that, for lack of a better term, human need to physically interact with each other, not over Zoom, but actually at a bar, at a coffee shop?
You sort of need the cloud is the OS. You
Mhm.
need the hardware. The hardware is going to be new pods of distributed locations. So say
Mhm.
it like a new company like Grupa, for example, we have someone sitting in New York, someone will be sitting in Palo Alto, someone sitting new distributed locations where people can form pods where okay the design team is meeting together today, right, and they set the location physically, right, people in the same cities could collaborate, right. There's going to be a need for a hardware system, which is what we work try to do by trying to have offices almost in every city, so people can collaborate across a city. I think creativity, yes, it happens on the internet, but there's this serendipity that happens physically. So
Yeah,
connecting creativity, serendipity gives us innovation. So we think that that's how the future is going to look like.
that sounds like an exciting future. So we're coming up on time, Samuel. I want to leave the last word to you. So do you have any last words to our listeners or our viewers about whether how the co-creator economy, how you foresee it forming, or Grupa, or its space in it? I want to leave the last word to you. So I'll turn it over to you.
I think I just want to talk with many founders there because for us, we had the courage to ask why. Why do we have to do it 9 to 5? Why do we have to centralize work? Why do we have to work for one company? Why do we have to do certain things? I think asking why and rethinking the future it requires a lot of courage. Why do you have to rethink education and everything? So I think that for us, I want to let people out there know that go out tomorrow asking why. All right, why should we come to office today? All right, why can't we form groups and meet in a coffee shop? Why can't we interact in a whole new way? Why can't we, define how I want work to happen, right? And no one should be excluded from this future. I think asking why will help you better renegotiate how you serve your companies or how you, create value and help us get one step further towards the co-creation economy.
I think asking why is the perfect question to end on. So, Samuel, thank you again for joining us on this podcast, and everyone, feel free to tune in next time on this podcast. Thanks, everyone.